Honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Premier. People in my constituency, including seniors and single mothers, are being evicted either to make way for renovations or because they simply cannot pay the rent hikes that are becoming commonplace. Some people are being placed in hotels paid for by the Department of Community Services. Some head to emergency shelters. Some, I'm sure, resort to unsafe situations. And frankly, there are some who I just don't know what happens to because, Mr. Speaker, there is simply no place for them to go. Mr. Speaker, can the Premier please provide evidence to the House that this government's housing plans are having a positive impact in Dartmouth North?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable for the question. Tell her we continue to provide rent subs not only in Dartmouth North but across the region, Mr. Speaker. We continue to invest in housing, both our own stock, Mr. Speaker, and ensuring that there's affordable housing in the private market. But I want to tell the Honourable Member we know there's more work to do, Mr. Speaker. We're feeling, as I've said many times, the growth of this economy, Mr. Speaker, has taken a lot of people with it, but it has left some people behind. And that is the reality, and we're going to work towards providing public policy that actually drives the results that we're hoping for, Mr. Speaker, that leaves more money in the pockets of low-income Nova Scotians, ensuring that we can provide them support when it comes to housing, the myriad of options when it comes to providing those supports for living with, Mr. Speaker, and at the same time ensuring, as the Honourable Member known, her leader talked about, the child poverty rate in this province is far too high, Mr. Speaker. We need to continue to work to ensure that as we as a province continue to grow, have record growth in this economy, that we begin to make sure that we share it with those who need it the most.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Mr. Speaker, public policies like rent supplements, we know, are not working in an environment where there's no place to live. And public policies like the standard household rate change at Department of Community Services also doesn't work because it's not enough money. We also know that the waiting list for public housing has not budged in years, Mr. Speaker. When people facing eviction come into my office, it is heartbreaking for them to be told to get in line behind thousands of others waiting for housing. In November of last year, the wait list was at the highest number in 4 years, at 5,316 households. That's including 1,639 families and 2,546 seniors. Mr. Speaker, can the Premier please explain why the number of Nova Scotians on the wait list for housing has barely budged during his time in office?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, last year 2,500 people came off that list, Mr. Speaker. The reality of it is we know there's more work to do, but there's one thing for certain that we've seen across the region, Mr. Speaker, that rent control doesn't work. That's the reality. The solution they're providing doesn't fix the problem. It's a good slogan. It actually fits on the pamphlet well. It misleads and represents what's actually the reality of what's going to happen for those families, Mr. Speaker. The reality of it is we need to continue to work with the private sector to provide opportunities. We as a government need to continue to invest in our own housing stock. And we need to make sure, Mr. Speaker, that Nova Scotians have the ability to move into their own properties, Mr. Speaker. That's why we continue to make those investments.